Welcome to another episode of Go FUD Yourself. Today is the crypto arms race, and I'm your host, Ceara Crawford. Crypto arms race is my absolute favorite topic. We get to go all around the world, sometimes to very luxurious destinations, and see who's going to come out on top in terms of crypto. Who's arming themselves? Who is accepting crypto? Who is regulating crypto? Who is going to be the crypto capital of the world? That is what the crypto arms race is about. Today, it is just me. You are stuck with a solo episode, which may be a new format that we're going to keep trying on Go FUD Yourself. But still the same topic, still the same schedule, still your daily crypto news. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to start with the SEC because they won something which none of us are going to be happy about as degens. We're going to talk about the EU and what's going on that is kind of good news, actually. For the last little while, we've been having some bad news about anti-money laundering and MiCA. Degens do not want to give up their anonymity. But the EU is dropping their $1,000 payment cap for self-custody crypto wallets. Shiba is hugely searched in the EU. We're going to talk about that too. And then we're mostly going to talk about India. They are maintaining a very firm stance. They are not recognizing crypto as a currency, despite the term cryptocurrency. But they're also shutting down crypto dexes. So who knows how they really feel. Let's go. Okay, before we get into it, I just want to point out that we are totally unsponsored, totally live, totally unedited. And by we today, I mean me. And with that, we don't have real sponsors, but we do sometimes have merch sponsors. When we're at conferences, we go around and we snag as much merch as possible. So today is a Codebase and Avalanche from the Avalanche Hacker House that was at ETH Denver. If you have merch that you want us to wear, send it on over. All right. What is going on in the wild world of crypto? As I said, today is not super hot destinations, but there is some really hot news. Just yesterday, on Wednesday, it was announced that the Securities and Exchange Commission achieved a significant victory against Coinbase when a judge ruled that the crypto exchange's engagement in unregistered security sales could proceed to jury trial. The ruling caused Coinbase shares to dip about 2.5% overnight. This legal challenge, initiated by the SEC in June, accuses Coinbase of operating as an unregistered broker and exchange. Despite the mixed ruling, which dismissed the claim regarding Coinbase's wallet application, the court's decision underscores the ongoing regulatory scrutiny facing the crypto industry, particularly concerning compliance with securities law. Just yesterday on our DGen episode, JD and I were talking about how the DeFi Education Fund is also suing the SEC for not providing some of this clarity in regulation. We also talked about how that court case is because the SEC has been overstepping and not doing its due process when bringing in new rules. So how can we be moving to trial? How can we move forward and let the SEC come out on top here when they might not even be doing it legally?
There's more to the story. When the SEC was formed 90 years ago, a lot of things had broken down. The stock market, of course, had broken down, but so had matters regarding corporate governance. Shortly after the 1929 market crash, there was a series of blockbuster congressional hearings that uncovered widespread abuses by executives at big banks, at utility companies, and investment funds. In essence, the executives had lined their pockets at few the investors' expense, and bad corporate governance was part of the problem. So, shortly thereafter, when Congress created the SEC, Congress determined that as part of our role, we should play a part in corporate governance. Now, this role...
Jeez. So that video is one of the newest videos from the SEC on their YouTube channel. And I wanted to show you today that Gary Gensler is actively thinking about crypto. He's actively thinking about people's best interests, or at least he believes he is. But how can that be the case when 90 years ago, we had the same problems with TradFi, why the SEC was even created, and they still haven't solved that. So how can we really be trusting in the SEC to solve the problems that we might be having with crypto regulation? I know that for degens, that's the popular opinion. For those in TradFi, the popular opinion is probably a lot more along the lines of the SEC should come out with regulation. But the SEC is coming out with regulation in the wrong format and they're not following due process. So what are we actually going to see happen with all these court cases? I think people are really surprised that Coinbase might actually be going to a jury trial about this. because so far the SEC has been losing a lot of these cases, especially about airdrops, especially about securities, although they have not been losing cases against celebrity endorsements. So that's pretty interesting. That's America. We can talk about America all day, but instead, why don't we talk about Europe for a few minutes? So we've been talking about MiCA a lot. We've been discussing how MiCA is going to really crack down on regulation in terms of crypto. We've been talking about how MiCA is coming into play in 2025, but a lot of countries are already adhering to that. But now we also have different self-custody and anti-money laundering laws coming out. These are because of the sanctions with Russia. These are because of the sanctions with Israel. This is because people are trying to circumvent those sanctions by using crypto. So the European Union has actually revised its anti-money laundering legislation, removing a controversial proposal to impose a 1,000 euro limit on transactions from self-custody crypto wallets. The Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee and the Civil Liberties, Justice, and Home Affairs Committee have passed these new rules, which still require crypto asset service providers to conduct identity checks for transactions over 1,000 euros. That's KYC, know your user, or know your customer. The decision marks a significant step in the EU's regulatory approach, aiming to balance financial security with the preservation of individual privacy and economic freedom. What's really interesting about this is that there is a way broader global discourse on this regulation. It's really hard to safeguard against money laundering, but also ensuring the rights to privacy and anonymous transactions. I don't know how we can expect anybody to come out and be able to balance those two things when even within DeFi, we're not sure. We were using tornadoes for a while, right? So that we could just keep it all very anonymous. But that's actually kind of against what blockchain is supposed to do. Blockchain is supposed to be more transparent. We're upset when our DEXs don't have transparency about their payments. We're upset when we can't tell where a wallet is sending its money. We're always trying to investigate and determine who's behind the giant whale wallets. So how could we expect government, who are already used to being in control, to be any different? With that in mind, they have been looking at anti-money laundering and regulation of crypto assets for so many years now.
In terms of the expansion from virtual currencies to virtual assets, they rethought the position, essentially, and looked at, between those 2015 and 2018, they recognized that virtual currencies space had evolved into and included a range of new products and services, business models and activities, which meant that the previous narrow focus on virtual cryptocurrencies required updating. Just to put you in the picture, how many of you are familiar with the three relevant FATF recommendations here? Recommendation 14, 15, and 16. Who is not familiar with that? Okay, lots of people. Okay, let me just summarize those because it will put you in the picture as to whether or not what we're talking about makes sense. Recommendation 14 is about money or value transfer services, MVTS. And in 2015, 16, 17, the standards were applicable to those kinds of services. In other words, transactions that go cross-border using wire transfer type services. And this is connected to the issue that I mentioned earlier about wire transfers. So what does that mean? Recommendation 14 requires natural or legal persons that provide money, money or value transfer services to be required to be licensed or registered. Countries should take action with a view to identifying natural or legal persons. MVTS providers should be subject to monitoring and all AML-CFT compliance requirements, etc.
As far as I can tell, this isn't new. This is a clip from the Academy of European Law about anti-money laundering and crypto in the EU from 2019. As you can see, they've already been discussing crypto and what's going on with crypto since 2015, 2016, 2017. He stated that already. In 2019, lots of people still weren't super familiar with how crypto might fall under the European laws of anti-money laundering. As far as I can tell, and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not any of those things, but as far as I can tell, this shouldn't be a surprise. We already knew that international wire transfers required know your user or know your customer. Why would crypto internationally be any different, especially when we know that governments want to impose sanctions, when we know that governments want to be in control and have that information and be able to tax that information? So as much as it's interesting that the regulation is coming into play, I think the FUD surrounding it is a little bit unnecessary. However, they have removed the proposal to impose a 1,000 euro limit on transactions from self-custody crypto wallets. That's probably because they determined that they wouldn't be able to control it. But it's a little bit of hype when there's been a lot of FUD around that. You know what's good and happening in Europe is Shiba. So According to just Google searches, Shiba Inu has climbed the ranks to become the second most popular cryptocurrency in Europe, trailing only behind Bitcoin in search popularity. The token's recent rally, which saw a 300% increase in only 8 days, has reignited interest reminiscent of its 2021 peak. With Shiba surpassing Ethereum, Cardano, Dogecoin in Google searches across many European countries, Western and Eastern alike, its burgeoning popularity signals a growing curiosity and investor base in regions including Italy, Russia, and France. This newfound attention is supported by Shiba's strong community presence on social media platforms, further solidifying its position in the crypto market. We love Shiba, you love Shiba, everyone loves Shiba, but now Europe loves Shiba. And this is a little bit different because typically we have seen that, especially in Western Europe, that the popular tokens are what really overtakes because people have a lot of trust in TradFi in Western Europe, whereas in Eastern Europe, we see that meme coins, altcoins are really up and coming. But it's interesting to see something kind of resurge like this. A lot of people believe that this is going to be a huge indicator of the upcoming bull market, which is pretty exciting. I think it could also be that Avalanche has been going pretty international and they just launched their meme coin rally as well. That's some good news. That's some hype on the crypto arms race today. We're going to talk about India. India is always back and forth. They're not sure how they feel or what they think about crypto. They say, it's not a money, it's yours. You do what you want with it. We're not regulating it. And then they say, whoa, maybe we could tax it. And then they say, oh, maybe we should provide some protection. And then they say, no, that's too much work. If you're participating here, you participate on your own accord. And then we saw some changes in that after BRICS started really focusing on crypto. However, this week, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman clarified the nation's position on cryptocurrencies, stating that they cannot be considered as currency within the country. Despite the recent surge in the crypto market, with Bitcoin reaching new highs, Shiba being hot in Europe, Sitharaman emphasized that digital assets like Bitcoin and Ether could be traded and held, but are not recognized as legal tender. The Indian government is working on introducing its digital rupee, which will embody crypto features under the regulatory purview of the RBI, aiming to safeguard financial transactions while ensuring compliance with anti-money laundering and know your customer norms. If you've been paying attention, you know that we did an episode, I believe last week, on central bank digital currencies or CBDCs. Basically, BRICS is coming out with their own because they're looking for de-dollarization and they're looking to surpass all of the sanctions that have been laid against any of these countries over the last several years. We're not surprised to see that India says, hey, you know, we can't really prevent you from holding this because what are we going to do about it? But also, we're not going to recognize it as legal tender because we're coming out with our own CBDC, because we're coming out with a blockchain solution currency already. I don't think that this is very surprising either, but it is kind of interesting because India's crypto market cap is now at $2.7 trillion. So currencies are going to be considered fiat. They're going to be controlled by the central bank. Bitcoin, ETH, altcoins are not going to be considered that way by the central bank in India. But that doesn't mean that they might not try to tax you on their digital rupee. All right, what else is going on in India? Well, with that in mind, OKX is exiting India. OKX, a global crypto exchange, has announced its withdrawal from the Indian market, urging users to redeem their funds by April 30th. That is soon. This decision follows after India's Financial Intelligence Unit issued compliance notices to 9 foreign exchanges, leading to OKX's website and application being blocked. The exchange's departure underscores the complex regulatory environment in India, characterized by stringent measures and a lack of clear guidelines for the crypto sector, which we just discussed. Despite ongoing discussions, India's crypto regulations remain undefined, attracting foreign exchanges operations within the country. I think it's a pretty big deal to have a big group like this leave with not a lot of time. There's just over 30 days for you to withdraw all of your assets and, I don't know, run with them, find somewhere else to keep them that's regulatorily compliant in India. But it hasn't been clear as to what will be compliant in India, at least not up until now. This is a pretty big deal because existing tax policies and regulatory actions are going to keep pushing crypto businesses to relocate outside of India. And just like we're seeing in the States, that means we're going to have offshore companies. That means there's going to be less tax revenue. That means there's going to be fewer local participants. It means a very international world for finance. There's going to be a lot of de-dollarization. Maybe there will be a de-rupeeization as well.
यूआरएल बैन किया गया। उसके बाद दोस्तों बैक टू बैक जो भी अपना फॉरेन एक्सचेंज था जो FI एक्ट के तहत नहीं आना चाह रहा था वो इंडिया से बाहर जा चुका है। रिसेंटली OKX एक्सचेंज के लिए ऑफिशियल नोटिस कि 30 अप्रैल तक अपना फंड को निकाल सकते हो, नहीं तो 30 अप्रैल के बाद आपका फंड स्टक हो जाएगा। हम फाइनली
I wanted to show this so that you can see that this is a big deal for those who are actively participating in crypto in India. They have to move all of their assets out of this, which was previously compliant. I think that's a pretty big deal. The other reason that this is a big deal is something that we actually talked about last week already, which is that COMEX, Binance's successor in Russia, has also announced their shutdown in, well, they gave a little bit more notice. COMEX, the crypto exchange that recently took over Binance's operations in Russia, has announced plans to cease operations and completely shut down by May 10th, 2024. The decision comes after taking the helm in September amidst increasing scrutiny and potential sanction violations investigations by the United States against Binance. This move reflects the growing pressures on crypto exchanges operating in Russia following the imposition of Western sanctions that disconnected Russian banks from international payment networks due to the conflict in Ukraine. COMEX has urged its users to quickly close their positions and withdraw their assets as it begins suspending services starting on March 25th. So they gave a lot of notice as to when they're actually going to be closed, but you only had like 1 week to pull stuff out, and it looks like OKX is doing something similar. If you look through the translations, it looks as though some things you'll be able to keep in there for about the next month, but you really should pull out as soon as possible. Why does it matter that Russia is doing this and India is doing this? Because it's BRICS, because they are launching a CBDC that will circumvent SWIFT, that will be on chain. And so what I think is happening here is they're not necessarily bringing out a lot of regulations. They're saying we can't really prevent you from participating, but we're not going to accept that currency anywhere. We're not going to support you. We're not going to make sure that there are consumer protection measures, but you can just use the digital rupee or the digital ruble or the combined currency that we're going to be coming out with. Now, I say all of this. I say, oh, they're closing. What are we going to do if they're closing? This is obviously a signal. This is obviously an indicator. We should be worried about de-dollarization. But then KuCoin becomes the first compliant global crypto exchange in India. So this is a pretty substantial milestone in India, because it's the first global crypto exchange company to comply with the Financial Intelligence Unit, marking a notable advancement in regulatory adherence. This development highlights KuCoin's commitment to user asset security and regulatory compliance, aiming to enhance the Indian cryptocurrency market's integrity. The recognition by CoinDCX's CEO Sumit Gupta emphasizes the importance of this compliance for fostering a safer crypto environment and encouraging other international exchanges to follow suit. So we're seeing that a local exchange isn't able to work there, and an international exchange isn't able to work within India or within BRICS unless they're going to be completely compliant, which I guess makes sense. But what are they complying with? There hasn't been a lot of information about regulation. That being, this is a pretty good precedent to have set. If they're looking at having the digital rupee, if they're looking at not recognizing anything but fiat as actual tender, this is probably a good time for DEXs, dApps, protocols to enter the space in a regulatory way, because people are going to be looking for different options and they're going to be trying to figure out what they can do with their digital rupee as well. Now, the CEO of KuCoin says, by successfully completing this registration in India, we are set to enhance the Indian user's experience and reaffirm our dedication to compliance and security. I personally think this is a really good move. Plus, it's a very reputable KuCoin. I don't think that this is really going to be able to go wrong for them. Although I would be wary about BRICS having kicked out Binance and having kicked out OKX. So who knows how long it'll last. That is your short trip around the world today. I hope that you enjoyed this solo episode about the crypto arms race. It's totally live. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, 12:30 Eastern. Hit subscribe. If you're watching on Twitter, come find us on YouTube. You can ask questions in the comments and we will respond to them live as well. Thank you so much for joining me. And with that,